Hello and welcome back to the Nasty Metal Production Grid YouTube, and welcome to another Friday review. And today I am here to review Ache and Impulse, which is the debut full-length album from Harvest of Ash, who are a post metal slash doom band. Very interesting in there, and I'll get into that. This, of course, was dropped just today, again, September 23rd, through, of course, Horror, Pain, Gore, Death Productions. Yes, and I pronounced that correctly. Horror, Pain, Gore, Death Productions, who have been sending me a lot of promos via digitally through my Gmail account. So, without further ado, let me get into my overall thoughts on Ache and Impulse from Salt Lake City's own Harvest of Ash. Let's get into it, folks. So, before I really get into my overall thoughts on Ache and Impulse, the debut full-length album from these guys, you know what I have to do. I have to do a track listing rundown so I can tell you folks where the songs are on this album, how many songs were on this album, and what's the time length for this album. And since there's at least 5 songs here in total, it all clocks in at the length of 40 minutes and 35 seconds. So these 5 songs are beginning with, well, obviously the song that's named after them, Harvest of Ash. Then, of course, we get into 1, Postdrome, 2, Aura, 3, Headache, and then finally ending with 4, Postdrome. So there you go. There's your 5 tracks. So, this is going to be a little bit of an interesting one because I've reviewed typical albums like these before, especially ones that were released through Paul of Doomsay's Today Records, which had very much similar bands like this. However, I don't think I've ever heard a band like this that really kind of combined the sort of sludgy, sort of almost 90s modern doom metal sound. Very much probably very similar. Technically, the bands that these guys will get compared to is some different ones I've seen with High on Fire and Electric Wizard. But I do get a little bit of another particular band who are not coming to my mind right now, which is stupid enough. But I just, I almost had their name, and I'm now an idiot. But all you need to know is that they do technically tend to take a lot more of that sort of 90s sort of doom sound that's very sludgy. It's very modern. But they definitely tend to combine it with what they call post-metal, which I'm not quite sure what that completely means, because I never really heard a whole lot of metal bands that were at least alternative bands from the 90s that got tagged post-metal. I heard a lot that got was like post-punk I know of, and I know like what, post-grunge and shit like that, but I've never really heard a whole lot of bands that were tagged post-metal. So I can't give you any sort of good comparisons. I'm not nearly as intelligent about that stuff, so I'm pretty much in the dark. And in this case, I'm shooting through in the dark, basically, with this genre, or at least with this band, and so I'm just a little bit not very intelligent with this stuff, so I'm not as smart with it. But all I can say is, there's a little, I guess, if for something that right here that is tagged post-metal, I guess this is kind of one of my really first forays into the realms of post-metal. So, a little interesting there. But there's also some similar, I guess, some inspirations or at least sound wise to maybe some bands that are like what considered modern hardcore and stuff like that, and there's plenty of that in this stuff. There is. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to read you the description of at least that was given to me, that is basically for at least Harvest of Ash and this band. It, of course, is a little sort of description that was sent in within the RAR or zip archive, whatever, that again, part of the promo that Horror, Pain, Gore, Death Productions sent me So I'm just going to read this, and I think it's will give you a better idea what to kind of expect with this release, since you're very much are unfamiliar with Harvest of Ash here. So here we go. I'm going to read this. Horror Pain Gore Death Productions welcome Harvest of Ash to the roster with the debut album Aching Impulse, hailing from Salt Lake City, Utah. Harvest of Ash sonically are a meticulous blend of doom metal, post-metal, sludge, and hardcore. Aching Impulse pummels listeners with colossal riffs, spacey interludes, and triumphant resolutions throughout the album's 5 epic tracks, which clock in at over 40 minutes. Thematically, these tracks invoke the stages of a migraine headache to take listeners on a personal journey from self-loathing to self-affirmation. Enthralling and devastating, Harvest of Ash pushed the boundaries to the extreme while bringing the beat down, as it's stated here. Aching Impulse was engineered and mastered by metal maestro Andy Patterson, I'm not quite familiar with, who worked with bands such as Sub Rosa, Cult Leader, and The Autolith. Again, also not familiar with any of those bands. So, for fans of Minra, Black Sabbath, Boris, Cult of Luna, Electric Wizard, High on Fire, Isis, Melvins, Neurosis, Pelican, Russian Circles, St. Vitus, Sleep, and Yob. So there you go, folks. And I think all those bands that were listed that obviously that this release would appeal to, well, that gives you a very good idea, because they probably take plenty of those band styles and basically combine it into one sort of record. And the only thing I can tell you here is that each song don't completely differ from one another. They're very, pretty much very slow, kind of plodding doom metal that has that sort of, or at least sludgy, sort of doomy post-metal sound. And that's all I can probably say. There is some of those spacey interludes combined within, at least within these songs. They definitely do that. It's not like any sort of like proggy stuff, you know. Not like, I wouldn't even say it's anywhere close to something like a Mastodon. But it doesn't really push that, which I'm kind of glad. I'm not a huge Mastodon fan, even though I've seen them live before. But I'm just not, it's like, so I'm not a huge fan there, but I don't, and since I'm familiar, it's at least not that, but still, at the end, not a whole lot on this record that completely sticks out at me. Nothing completely differentiates or at least separates itself from one another. So it's a little bit kind of difficult for me to really kind of tell you which, just to give you more of an in-depth review or take at least on these songs. I can't, because of they almost blend in too much to each other. It's almost like a one long jam and a very long slow jam in a very sludgy, doomy sort of way. And it's different at times, even though, again, I've reviewed bands like this before. And I can tell you bands are probably slightly better than, let's say, Harvest of Ash. But right now, this is just me basing my thoughts off of basically their very first full-length record, which again follows the Deadlights EP from 2020. So, who knows? They probably did it for this one release, but if you're one that at least somewhat digs, I mean, again, if you dig this sort of almost very sludgy, very slow kind of paced doom / post-metal stuff, that's in like what you expect from like a band that would combine the styles of like Melvins and Neurosis and High on Fire and Electric Wizard and Black Sabbath and shit like that, then obviously this is going to be for you, especially if you enjoy it in a very epic length. I mean, the last 2 tracks on this release at least clock in at the length of 10 minutes and 60 seconds to 10 minutes and 17 seconds. So that's basically close to being a little over 20 minutes. So if you really dig at least your very slow-paced, sludgy, doomy stuff, and you like it at this length, then obviously you're going to be in heaven. Well, maybe in hell. I don't know. Depends on which direction you side on, which place you want to sway to, But if you like that, you're going to love this. If you don't, stay away from this, and that's where I'm probably just going to end it. It's a fine release from these guys. I don't dislike it, but it's not going to be something I'm going to pull out every week or something, and that's just where I'm at. Maybe once a year or something, I might listen to this again, but that's where I'm at. So, again, I appreciate the fact that this was sent to me as a promo. I appreciate the fact that I was given the opportunity to review this and listen to this. But at the end of the day, this is probably not going to be my most favorite thing I've heard all year. It's not going to make it up there. My personal tastes are different, and that's where I've said, that's where I say it's personal. I got my personal tastes, and this one is interesting. Again, I've got an open mind for stuff, but right now, since I've obviously opened myself to listen to something like this, it's definitely not going to be the most I'm going to listen to something like this. It's all right for what it is. And I think that they did probably a decent job for what they were able to do with their style. And I think that they did fine probably with this one. They probably are much more happier with it. And for people that are into this style, they probably will be a bit more happy with this. But right now, I'm just not one of those. But I'm just being as honest as I can without trying to come off as a dick. So there you go. It's a fine release, and that's where I'm going to leave it at. So there you go, folks. Those are my thoughts on Aching Impulse, the debut full-length album from Harvest of Ash. I'm not going to give it a rating because at this point, I don't know if it's going to justify this release if I give it a rating. And if I do, I'm probably going to end up regretting it afterwards. I'll overthink it is what I'm getting at. I'll just overthink it, and I'm just not going to overthink it. So I'm just not going to give it a rating, and instead I'll leave it up to you guys what you really think of this. If this sounds like something you'll be into, then obviously you know where to look, and that'll be in the description box where I'll leave you a link to, of course, the Bandcamp pages to where you can listen to this. But if this doesn't sound like anything you'd be into, stay away, okay? Just stay away. I don't think you'll be into it, all right? Unless you have a bit of an open mind. But if you don't have much an open mind and you kind of have your preferences on genre styles, then stay away. So that's where I'm going to leave it at. So thank you to Horror Pain Gore Death Productions for sending this via my Gmail account. So there you go. I hope all of you enjoyed. This is Heavy Thrasher saying I'm out. And I'll see you all later. Take care, everyone.